I, along with many of my Gen Z peers, am bad at developing the impulse to stop and enjoy things, to welcome a moment of zen when it passes me by. I'm sure there's plenty of quibbling about whether the brunt of the blame should be put on autism, or our modern hyper-consumerist internet, or the rat race of capitalism, but that's outside the scope of this writing. Mainly, what I want to look at is the different ways in which this problem manifests within myself and others, and try to explain it the best I can. We're heavily conditioned to believe that whatever we do with every single second of our lives must be tangible and, to some extent, permanent. Otherwise, we're not allowed to feel pride in a given activity. We always need to have something to show for what we do, whether it's a social media photo of the hike you went on, the list of books you read throughout the summer, or a creative work you share with the public. It's implied in this way of thinking that you constantly need to prove your self-worth as evidence that you don't just take up space and resources. This isn't to say that we shouldn't do things with our lives that challenge us or lead to personal growth, but we've been stuck in this pattern of behavior for so long that it's difficult to be content with just making happiness. Happiness is not tangible, nor is it permanent, but it's so valuable that everyone craves it. Yet, when we make happiness with a lazy afternoon or by playing games or spending time with friends, the productivity-centric mindset mucks up our hindsight of such activities, especially if your free time is scarce, because then there's an anxiety-fueled endeavor to squeeze more things and feelings out of what little you have to work with. And thus, some people are convinced that it needs to be optimized. This is a rabbit hole with no end. Some turn to time management, planning out their leisure as if it was any other chore, not because it helps them enjoy individual activities more, but because it makes it easier to convince yourself afterwards in hindsight that you got a lot done. I've seen people get this optimization brainworm so bad that they start to calculate what percentage of their lives are wasted on mundane tasks like grooming, cooking, and commuting. This is utterly deranged. It isn't enough that you've completed brushing your teeth, but now you need the comfort of knowing you only have to do it another 36,752 times in your lifetime for the task to be truly done. Why are some people so haunted by such ordinary tasks? This is because we live in a completion culture, where everything is about the end instead of the actual task in the moment. We don't do things to enjoy them, we do things to complete them. People don't strive for experiences, they strive for checklists. Artists especially, it's just a given that every person who makes stuff is going to have dozens of works in progress sitting in the shadows of their completed projects. Obviously, if you struggle to finish creations, that's a problem. But having works in progress isn't. They're not worthless because they were still an exercise of your creativity. The purpose of the creative hobby is about the enjoyment of creation, not necessarily about completion. Unfortunately, for some people, this isn't an option because it's their source of income, but even then, I worry that every creative feels shame over the amount of works in progress they have. I mean, I'm shameful enough about mine that I refuse to go into further detail. With this completion culture, it's no wonder then that we struggle to stop every now and then and take in the moment. Meditation seems to be how people cope with it, but the way in which they go about it misses the point. The context surrounding the activity hurts its meaning because most people tend to schedule it out and treat it no different a chore than getting your cardio in for the day or doing your stretches. It's made adjacent to tasks that you're rushing to get to the end of. When Alan Watts talks about meditation and religious practices in general, he stresses that the oddities and whimsicalities are supposed to be fun, that you do these practices not just because they're meaningful, but because you enjoy them. It's something that you should find yourself doing on a regular basis. A Christian, for example, doesn't pray as part of a daily chore. They pray because it's something they enjoy doing as a function of how they live. These rituals aren't chores. They're an extension of yourself practiced when you feel the moment arises. Meditation isn't the same when done in the modern completion culture context, where you schedule and time it, and then either reward or chastise yourself depending on whether or not you were able to last the entirety of your meditation timer. The way Alan Watts sees meditation is as an opportunity to take in an environment that otherwise passes you by. It's a chance to sit down and absorb the sounds and breath of life happening around you. Musicians understand exactly what I'm getting at. There's this impulse for everything to be interpreted as music. You could be at a fast food joint and the beeping of the machines are the synth, the clicking of footsteps as percussion, and as soon as the baby from 4 tables down starts having a fit, the vocals have entered the mix. This would be a good mindset to try out next time you attempt meditation. It's an opportunity to listen to an avant-garde rhythm that will never happen the same way twice. A beautiful disposability of sound, no different than elevator music or a distant tune at a festival or arcade that you'll likely never hear again. I know some people will criticize this approach, especially if they live in a car-dependent concrete jungle, but there's a touch of childlike wonder you have to go into these experiences with. There are times where I've been on acid, and the whooshing sound of distant cars passing by or the wind swishing through the trees at night would be some of the most interesting things I'd listen to. The trick is that you have to allow yourself to be sensitive to your surroundings and to feel without passing judgment upon the stimuli. No acid required. Not every situation in which we pause to take in the world has to be as deep as meditation either. This can happen in different momentary forms. I still remember a time years back when I was driving a friend of mine somewhere for dinner, and only when we got to our destination did she remember her phone wasn't on her. I was upset. We drove all the way back to her place, and in my huff to get back into the car, she told me to stop and look at the beautiful sunset behind me. Of course, I was treating this as another task to scratch off the to-do list until we could finally have dinner, but she was insistent that I actually stopped to take it in. And I haven't forgotten that moment since. It serves as a reminder that if I let myself get constantly caught up in the conundrums of the world, that I will miss many opportunities for beautiful pauses just like that one. Here's another example I'm sure someone will find helpful. I was talking with a friend about childhood nostalgia, and they wished they had a 3DS as a kid, but felt like trying to recreate that experience as an adult wouldn't feel meaningful anymore because it's not in the right context. Unfortunately, it's really easy for people to use this as an excuse to give up, rather than as motivation for creating the proper context. It's not like you need to turn back time to when you were 12 with no adult responsibilities or worries just to enjoy playing, and I hate to use this word for something as new as the 3DS, retro consoles in the same way you would have as a child. I say that because I coincidentally know from experience. As a kid, I grew up with Nintendo consoles like the SNES, DS, and Wii, but by the time the 3DS came out, I'd already moved on to Xbox and PC gaming, so I didn't get to experience the 3DS as a kid either, and that left me with a similar itch. My boyfriend is a huge Nintendo nerd, and while he was more than willing to lend me his 3DS anytime I wanted, I just never took him up on the offer. That is, until I had to regularly drive my brother to college for a few weeks because he was recovering from surgery. It's a bit of a drive, and I had to wait there for his class to be done because it saved a lot of gas. And when I bitched about this to my boyfriend, he gave me his 3DS to kill time and installed Bowser's Inside Story because he finds it blasphemous that I never finished that game as a kid. There was something about sitting in the quiet library of the college, opening up the 3DS, popping my earbuds in, and getting lost in the game to kill time, just like I would have as a kid. Except instead of playing it to kill time as I'm being dragged somewhere by my parents, I'm doing it to kill time because I'm being dragged somewhere by my brother. It's in these altered environments where different flavors of stillness can be enjoyed that we otherwise aren't capable of. These environments give us a context that's conducive to these sorts of activities. And I know this is the case because as soon as my brother recovered, my boyfriend's DS was collecting dust sitting around at home. Considering that the rise of work from home has led some to struggle with work-life balance due to sleeping in the same room they work in, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to also say that different activities are for different environments. And sometimes all we need to enable ourselves to feel the stillness we desire is to do it in an environment that is away from these distractions. Getting back to the 3DS example, it doesn't surprise me that retro handhelds are becoming more popular. I've even seen some people pair it with a dumb phone in their daily carry so they're not poisoning environments that could otherwise be perfect for reliving that nostalgia. Embarking on this all really starts with a simple question. Is inviting stillness into more of your environments something worth giving up convenient access to social media for? And I get it, this isn't a prescription everyone can take. There really are places where people are not a convenient walk or bike away from a third space like a library or some nature to get lost in, or at the very least a calm place they won't be kicked out from for loitering. This is why there's so many liminal ambient soundscapes on YouTube with melancholic or empathetic titles. Young people are rebelling against a world that doesn't want to give them these special places by creating a false alternative they can just flip on like a switch. It's not as good of a solution as actual third spaces, but it shows that when this deep emotional need isn't quenched, we find some way to appease it regardless of what the world is willing to give us. With all of these different flavors of stillness, one thing is true within all of them. Stillness is not something you wish for, it's something you have to invite in. We're living in a world of people who know hoarding wealth is immoral, but still do it. A world of people who want to create, but self-sabotage themselves. And a world of people who want peace and quiet, but seldom think to invite it in when the time arises. The Gen Z folk out there know what they're doing with liminal ambient. They understand that, to some extent, reality is something you create, not something that merely happens to you. Stillness doesn't happen to you. It's something you create.